I don't think people realize how much meaning an object can hold until it's all you have left of someone. For me, that object was my mom's watch that it wasn't expensive. No brand that would make anyone's head turn. Just a simple silver watch with a tiny crack on the glass and a leather strap that had worn soft over the years. But it carried her. The way it felt heavy in my hand, like it was holding more than just time, like it was holding her presence. When I was little, I'd sit next to her on the couch, pretending to fall asleep, and I could hear the faint tick of that watch against her wrist. Tick, tick, tick. It was oddly comforting, like a secret lullaby, keeping pace with her heartbeat. Even now, I swear I can remember the rhythm. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was too quiet, I'd hold it up close to my ear and just listen. It made me feel like she was still around, in some small way. After she passed, the watch became more than just jewelry. It was my anchor. Everyone else seemed to move on in their own way, but I couldn't. I wasn't ready. So I kept that watch close, on my bedside table, sometimes in my pocket. It was almost ritualistic, like if I held it long enough, maybe I wouldn't forget the sound of her voice, or the way her hand felt when it brushed my hair out of my face. Funny thing is, people always talk about big things when someone dies. The letters, the photos, the family heirlooms. But nobody tells you how a single object, something as small as a watch, can end up carrying the weight of all your memories. That watch wasn't just hers. It became mine. My piece of her. My aunt wasn't always the villain in this story. At least, that's not how I remember her. Growing up, she was the one who used to braid my hair when my mom was running late for work. She'd sneak me extra dessert when I was a kid, whispering, "Don't tell your mom." To me, she was this mix of stern and soft, strict when she had to be, but always ready to laugh at the smallest things. And then there was my cousin. He was the golden child, at least in everyone's eyes. Smart, ambitious, always the one who was going places. At family dinners, he'd be cracking jokes while explaining his latest achievements, and everyone would beam with pride. I'd sit there quietly, chewing on my food, half admiring him, half wishing someone noticed me in the same way that I still remember those Sunday dinners. The clatter of plates, the smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread filling the whole house. My aunt's laughter echoing from the kitchen. My cousin teasing me about how slow I ate, and me rolling my eyes, pretending to be annoyed even though I secretly liked the attention. Back then, it felt like family was solid. Like it was this net that would always catch me if I fell. But looking back now, I can see the cracks. Subtle, almost invisible at the time. The way my aunt's compliments always carried a comparison. "Your cousin studies so hard. Maybe you should too." Or, "Look how focused he is. You have potential," but it was like living in someone else's shadow without realizing you were standing in the dark. Still, despite all that, I trusted her. I trusted them. If you had asked me then, I would have said my aunt would protect me the way my mom did. That she would never, ever do anything to hurt me, especially after mom passed. I mean, how could she? The first time I noticed the watch was gone, I didn't panic. Not at first. That I was cleaning out the little drawer where I always kept it. You know how some things have their spot? That was the watch's spot. Right there, nestled between an old scarf my mom used to wear and a couple of letters I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I opened the drawer that day, humming absent-mindedly, expecting to see the familiar glint of silver waiting for me. But instead, nothing. Just the scarf, the letters. Empty space where it should have been. I remember my hand hovering there, feeling the cold wood of the drawer as if maybe my fingers would magically brush against it. I pulled everything out. The scarf, the letters, even some random pens and receipts shoved to the back. No watch. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the kind of panic you feel when you lose your keys or misplace your phone. This was different. This was heavier. I tore through my room, checking shelves, under the bed, even in my bag. I knew I hadn't moved it. I never moved it. The strangest thing? I could still feel it in my hand. That weight. That tick-tick-tick. That used to echo in the quiet. But all I was holding was air. And then came the thoughts. The sharp, whispering kind you try to push away. Did I forget where I put it? Did someone touch it? No, nobody would. Nobody could, except they could. I remember standing there, staring into that empty drawer for what felt like forever, this awful realization creeping in. Someone had been in my space. Someone had taken the one thing I swore I'd keep safe. That I wish I could tell you. I found the truth in some dramatic way, like catching someone red-handed or uncovering it through a trail of evidence. But no, the truth slipped out casually, almost carelessly, as if it wasn't a truth at all. As if it was nothing. I was in the kitchen that evening, helping clear up after dinner at my aunt's place. Plates clinking, water running, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. My aunt was chatting with my uncle in the next room, her voice low, but not low enough. I caught one sentence. Just one. Well, at least it paid for a semester of tuition. At first, it didn't register. But then she said it again, louder this time, almost proudly. The watch. The money from the watch. My body froze. I remember gripping the wet dish towel in my hands so tightly the fabric twisted. My ears were ringing, but my brain kept replaying her words over and over. The watch, my mother's watch. I walked into the living room, my voice barely steady. What did you just say? She looked at me, startled at first. Then her expression softened into something I can only describe as dismissive. Like I was overreacting. Like I was a child again. Oh, she said, I meant your mother's watch. Don't look at me like that. It was just sitting in a drawer. I thought, why not put it to good use? Your cousin needed the money. I can't describe the sound that left my throat. It wasn't a word. More like a half-choked laugh, half-cry. You sold it? You sold her watch. And she just nodded, as if she'd done the right thing. As if she had the right to do it. That moment, I felt like the ground had given way beneath me. My anchor, my piece of mom, gone. And not lost, not stolen by some stranger, but handed away. Traded for tuition money. I don't remember much after that. Just the pounding in my ears, my cousin standing awkwardly in the corner, my aunt insisting it was for the greater good. That your mother would have wanted it. Those words, cut sharper than anything else, because no, my mother wouldn't have wanted it. She would have wanted me to have her watch. She would have wanted me to feel close to her when the world got too heavy. And now, it was gone. I didn't plan it. I didn't rehearse the words in my head. They just came out, raw, jagged, sharp. I confronted my aunt right there in her living room, the walls closing in around us. My voice was shaking, but it carried more weight than it ever had before. How could you? That was my mother's watch. My only piece of her. She didn't flinch, not even a little. Instead, she sighed, like I was being dramatic, like this was some childish tantrum. You don't understand, she said, her arms crossed over her chest. Your cousin needed the money. College isn't cheap, and your mom would have wanted him to succeed. That sentence, your mom would have wanted it. God, I wanted to scream. The audacity to take my grief, my love for my mom, and twist it into some justification for her choices. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Don't you dare tell me what my mother would have wanted. She wanted me to be okay. She wanted me to hold on to her memory. That watch was all I had, and you sold it like it was junk. My cousin stood in the corner, silent, eyes glued to the floor. And that almost hurt more than my aunt's words. Because if it were me, if someone had given up something that precious for me, I wouldn't have been able to stay quiet. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. I could hear the rain outside tapping against the window, steady, relentless. My chest felt tight, my hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my skin. She finally raised her voice, defensive now. Do you think your mom would want her watch gathering dust in a drawer? At least now it's gone towards something meaningful. Something for the future. I stared at her. Really stared. And in that moment, I realized something that stung worse than the betrayal itself. She didn't see it. She didn't see the watch as my mother's heartbeat, my lifeline. To her, it was just an object with a price tag. And there was no way to make her understand that I turned and walked out, the sound of the rain swallowing me whole as I slammed the door behind me. My chest was burning, my eyes blurred with tears I couldn't hold back anymore. In that moment, I wasn't just angry. I was hollow. I didn't want to talk to him. Honestly, I wanted to avoid him forever. But anger has a way of boiling over into questions, and I couldn't stop myself from asking the one thing that haunted me. Did you know? We ended up face to face a few days later. It wasn't planned. I ran into him outside the campus library, his backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds dangling. He looked surprised to see me, like he'd been caught somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. I didn't bother with small talk. Did you know about the watch? His eyes darted away, down to the pavement, and in that split second, I had my answer. He mumbled something about how he didn't want to get involved, how it was Aunt's decision. And I swear, hearing him call her aunt instead of mom in that moment made my chest ache in the strangest way. Like he got to have her without question, without doubt, while everything I had was negotiable. You stood there, I said, my voice cracking, while she told me my mom's memory was worth a semester of your classes. And you said nothing. He tried to defend himself, fumbling over excuses. It wasn't like that. I didn't ask her to sell it. I didn't even want, but I cut him off. Then why didn't you say anything? Silence. Just silence. And suddenly, a flood of memories hit me. Flashbacks I didn't ask for. The two of us as kids, sitting in my mom's backyard, grass stains on our knees, sharing secrets under the stars. Him promising me once, we'll always have each other, no matter what. His laugh echoing as we rode our bikes down the street, racing until we couldn't breathe. The way he once stood up for me when some older kids teased me. Back then, he felt like a brother, like family I could count on. But standing there now, I realized he wasn't that boy anymore. Maybe he hadn't been for a long time. He looked at me with guilt, maybe even shame, but not enough to undo what was already broken. I walked away before he could say anything else. Because the truth was, I didn't want excuses. I wanted my mom's watch. I wanted my cousin to have cared enough to fight for me the way I once thought he would, but he didn't. Grief has this strange way of cornering you. At first, it paralyzes you, makes you sit in the dark, replaying everything that's gone wrong. But then it can push you into motion. Almost like desperation becomes fueled. That's what happened to me. After days of walking around with this hole in my chest, I decided I couldn't just sit there and let it be. My mom's watch wasn't just some trinket tossed into the past. I had to try. I had to find it.so. I started making calls. Pawn shops, jewelry stores, even secondhand dealers. Each time, I described the watch in detail, the cracked glass, the worn leather strap, the way it ticked a little slower than most. Some people were polite, others impatient. A few said they'd keep an eye out. Most just told me no. Died. Hang up, staring at my phone like maybe the answer would change if I called again. There were days I'd actually go in person, walking into those shops with the faint smell of metal and dust filling my nose. The displays always sparkled with things that had belonged to someone else. Gold chains, rings, pendants, all with stories I'd never know. And behind the counter, some stranger would glance up at me, shake their head, and I'd feel that familiar sting in my chest. But still, I kept searching, because the thought of giving up felt like betraying her all over again. There was one night, I remember it so vividly, when I sat at my desk surrounded by notes, phone numbers, even a map where I'd circled every shop I'd checked. My room was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen, the faint buzz of my phone vibrating with yet another sorry, can't help you. I buried my face in my hands and whispered, Mom, I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. It wasn't about the object anymore. It was about her. About holding on to the one thing that made me feel like she wasn't completely gone. And even though I had no idea where this search would lead me, I knew one thing. I wasn't stopping until I found it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I finally got the call. I'd left my number at so many shops that I barely recognized the voice on the other end at first. A man, older, steady. You said you were looking for a silver watch? With a cracked face? My heart stopped. I asked him to repeat it, just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. And when he described the leather strap, worn, frayed at the edges, I knew. He had it. Walking into his little shop felt like stepping into another world. The air smelled faintly of polish and old wood, and tiny rays of light filtered through dusty windows. My eyes darted across the displays, but then I saw it, sitting right there in a glass case. My mom's watch.my knees actually felt weak. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, staring at it like it might vanish if I blinked. The glass was scratched, the strap a little more worn than I remembered, but it was hers. It was mine. The shopkeeper must have noticed the way I was staring, because he opened the case gently, like he already knew how much it mattered. He placed it in my hands, and the weight of it made me gasp. It was the same weight I remembered. Heavy, familiar. I lifted it close to my ear, and there it was, the faint tick. Slower, but steady. I closed my eyes, and suddenly, memories flooded back. Mom sitting on the couch, her arm resting near me, the tick-tick-tick blending with the sound of her laughter. her hand brushing my hair away as I drifted off to sleep. It was like I'd been transported back to a moment I thought I'd lost forever. The shopkeeper smiled softly, almost knowingly. Beautiful piece. The man who sold it didn't say much, just needed the cash. But I've kept it in good condition. There was something gentle about his tone, something that made me feel like he understood this was more than just a transaction. More than money that I wanted to cling to it, to never let it go again. But part of me also knew what was coming. Because things like this, they're never that simple. Still, for that one moment, holding it in my hands again, it felt like my mom was right there beside me. The shopkeeper didn't rush me. He just let me stand there, holding the watch, my thumb brushing over the crack in the glass like it was some sacred relic. And to me, it was. But then reality set in. Because of course, it wasn't mine. Not anymore. It had a price now. How much? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He named a number. It wasn't outrageous, but it was still more than I had on me. I swallowed hard, nodding like I could handle it. But inside, my chest tightened. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about money. It was about the principle. Why should I have to buy back something that was already mine? Something my mother left behind for me. Something that should never have left my hands in the first place. The anger came rushing back, not at the shopkeeper, but at my aunt, at my cousin, at the way my grief had been bartered without my consent. I could hear my aunt's voice in my head again. Your mom would have wanted this. And I wanted to scream. No, she wouldn't have wanted me standing here, begging for the right to hold on to her memory. But then another voice came to me. My mom's this time. Softer. From some half-forgotten memory. She once told me, it's not the things we keep that matter, it's the love we carry. And in that moment, I froze. Because maybe she was right. Maybe the watch wasn't the only way to hold on to her. Maybe clinging to it, or even fighting for it, wasn't the only way to keep her with me. Still, I looked down at the watch in my hand, and the thought of leaving without it felt like tearing out a piece of my own heart. The shopkeeper must have seen the conflict in my eyes, because he said gently, you don't have to decide right now. Come back when you're sure. I nodded, slowly placing the watch back in the case. My hand lingered on the glass, trembling, before I finally pulled away. As I walked out of the shop, the sound of the tick still echoed in my ears. That I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was that I had a choice. And neither option felt simple. I went back to the shop a week later. I wish I could say I'd made the decision easily. But the truth is, I wrestled with it every single day. I'd pick up my phone to call the shop, then put it down again. I'd open my wallet, stare at the bills inside, and feel that tight knot in my chest. Over and over, I asked myself, what would mom want me to do? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't really about the watch. Not anymore. It was about me. About how I chose to carry her with me, whether the watch sat on my wrist or behind glass. So when I walked into that shop again, I already knew my answer. I bought it. Not because I believed an object could replace her, but because I wanted to take back what should never have been taken from me. Holding it again, fastening the strap around my wrist, it wasn't about reliving the past. It was about reclaiming something that had been wrongfully stolen. It was about drawing a line and saying, this is mine. This is my mother. This is my memory. But even as I slipped it on, I felt something shift inside me. The bitterness I'd been carrying toward my aunt, toward my cousin, even toward myself, began to loosen. I realized I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't rewrite the betrayal, but I could decide what to do with it. I could decide to stop letting it define me. I walked out of that shop into the sunlight, the watch snug around my wrist, ticking softly. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't just sound like grief. It sounded like continuity, like life. That I haven't spoken to my aunt much since then. My cousin and I, we drifted, and maybe that's for the best. Family doesn't always mean what we want it to. Sometimes, it's just the people who show up when it matters. And sometimes, it's the people who don't. But my mom, she's still with me. Not because of a watch, not because of anything that can be bought or sold, but because her love is stitched into the person I've become. The watch just reminds me to listen, to that steady tick, to that steady love.